Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Leading Through the Pandemic Virtual Summit. I'm your host, the founder of Soul Excellence Publishing, Kayleigh O'Keefe. And we've had just such an incredible first day of the summit, 3 amazing interviews, and I'm pumped to be joined by Marcs Snyderman, CEO of the Snyderman Law Group, to take us home on day 1. So welcome, Marc. So happy that you're here.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Now
The whole process has just been amazing.
Oh, good. I mean, that's really been the sentiment from everyone of like, it's not just writing, it's the connecting, the sharing, the learning from one another. And so I'm happy that your story will be shared more broadly tonight. And we'll dig in just a second. But before we do, tell us where you're joining from. And I like to get a weather report just to know what's going on where you are.
I am in Voorhees, New Jersey, which is close to Philadelphia. It is currently probably about 20 degrees outside. We have still have about maybe 5 or 6 inches of snow still left on the ground. It's iced over pretty good. It's really, really fun. It's lovely out.
Is the dog still enjoying it? We want to know.
She is still happy with the snow, but as long as I shovel a path for her off the deck, she wouldn't go out. She literally would not walk out the door. And because I usually shovel a path, so the other day I hadn't shoveled yet. She literally stood at the door and looked at me like, well, I need to go, so you need to shovel me a path.
So. There's a woman who knows what she wants and how to get it. All right. I respect that.
She runs the show. No doubt about it.
Well, Marc, before we get into your chapter, which it hits on so many important themes of just when the world changes, how we change, how we have to grow. But tell us just a bit more about what you do as CEO of Snyderman Law Group.
Sure. I started the law firm it's about 4.5 years ago now. And really, I had a vision that, the law practice in general, it doesn't help small and mid-sized businesses very well. It's the nature of the entire practice of how it's set up, how people build law firms, the way they're structured, and mostly the way they price. And they take themselves out of, I used to say like, I use the reference in the I think in probably in my bio about a baseball field, like that, lawyers used to be on the field playing utility positions for companies, right? You would use your attorney. When I got out of law school and I worked in Manhattan in 97, 98, you actually went to meetings with your clients, right? If they were going to go lease a space, it was natural for them to call you up and say, hey, come on down. I'm leasing a space, jump on the subway, go negotiate with them. Nobody does that anymore. You would never bring your lawyer to that because they're going to charge you an arm and a leg. And
right.
or you have no idea what that bill is going to look like. Next thing you know, you get a bill for $2,000-$3,000 or more. And if you're a small business, it's debilitating. So I just had a thought that, what if you ran it more like a startup? You virtualize the firm, you use technology the way it should be used, and you don't have big offices. You actually don't force people to come to you. You go to them, and, you can do it on a subscription model, right? Mm-hmm. So flat fee, they know what they're paying. There's no questions. They call, text, email whenever they need something. And, it's probably not the way most lawyers like to work because it does get to be a 24/7, practice. Mm-hmm. It is normal for my clients to call on the weekend and talk to me and want to just talk through things. But I know where they are and where they're going and what they're doing. And when they call and say, hey, I'm on my way to this meeting, I know what that meeting is already, and I can help them.
I mean, how cool, because you have the law background. You saw how things used to be, how they shifted. But of course, you have this entrepreneurial streak. And so you also are always looking for ways to adapt and evolve. And so I love to hear just the model that you built and in making it accessible to smaller businesses who really could use the help. But like you say, the model just currently wasn't set up for that. So
right.
It's super cool what you do. And a lot of what you do, because you wanted to be that player on the field, involved traveling and meetings and seeing people in person. And there's, some themes in your chapter about that and what changed for you. So let's talk about your chapter. Yeah. What did you write about? Bring us into your story and let's go from there.
So, I mean, I really wanted, I kind of needed to draw a picture of, kind of who I was for the reader, to me. Like, because the law practice is like one little piece of my life. And it is spun around, all these different entrepreneurial ventures, from things that I've done angel investing into, to projects that people come to me with that they want to get going. And, I kind of say yes a lot to helping people. It's just kind of become, and that's really a big theme of the chapter, is, feeling like I really need to give back and really need the help. And it's I don't really love the phrase give back. It's really just give, right? I mean, I just like to help people wherever I can, with knowledge that I've gained over, my career, and it spans a different, everything from, midtown law firm in Manhattan to public company to a privately held company that grew, lightning fast, when I was helping to run it. And there's, we went from 75 employees to 300 employees in 5 years. So, just seeing all those kind of things, you realize there's so much you have built up inside of you that you can actually help people with. And, trying to let that out. But I was so wrapped up, like, pre-COVID, in what I was doing and trying to build and build and build and build. And I had this, just driven. And, I've always been driven, and I think I used some of the examples from early, like the reason why I tell a story about the 99-cent eatery in Seaside Heights. Well, first of all, it is Sleeside, so you got to talk about it because it's so super fun. But, it's, me and my brother at, literally I'm in college, and he calls me. He's like, "What are we going to do this summer?" I'm like, "I don't know. I can find a job." He's like, "Well, this burger stand's open in Seaside." I was like, "What do we know about that?" He's like, "I don't know." So we get on the phone, we run through numbers, because there's no computers back. There was not, it's like we were emailing spreadsheets. We basically did it over the phone. Well, we got to borrow 20,000. Call our grandmother. We'll borrow 20,000 from her and start a business. And she's like, "What do you know about this?" I'm like, "Nothing. We'll figure it out."
Yeah.
Okay. And, luckily we had that seed fund because she helped us out. We went ahead and started the business and ran a hamburger stand on the boardwalk, like randomly.
This our book, Leading Through the Pandemic, it might be the only leadership book out there where Snooki from the Jersey Shore is mentioned. Read Marcs' chapter to learn more. So you have this entrepreneurial streak. The pandemic hits. You came back from trips. You're now basically at home. You're living with your family. Your whole routine changes. Like, what did it feel like for you? And when did you start to realize you needed to adapt?
Well, it was, I think it started with the first couple of weeks were like, okay, this is like, actually not so bad. Like, wow, I don't have to travel anywhere. I don't have to go anywhere. Because I've been running so much, and, I finally was like, this really isn't that bad. And then I think it was probably maybe 40, 45 days in that I was literally sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now, which is my home office. And, I like to surround myself with books and stuff that, makes me feel smarter than maybe I am. But I have a great window out on my backyard, and I was, just staring at this red robin, and I have a history of, depression, and it just kind of sunk, and everybody, depression is different for every person. And, I hate that. One of the things that's really hard is, and the stigma is so much stigma about depression and medicating for depression, and how do you handle things. And nobody, if you don't, you don't even say you can't understand it if you don't have it, but it is hard to understand what a person goes through when they hit the bottom and what it feels like for them. And I don't profess to know what it feels like for anybody else, because I couldn't.
Right.
I know what it is for me, and it's about the bottom of the world, right? You feel like, I think I describe it as, I know so many ways I usually describe it as, the bottom of a think about a well. You fall to the bottom of the well, but you never actually feel yourself fall. You just appear there, and it's total darkness. And I use there's actually one time I was when I was in Montana, and I used to travel all the time. I went to you can go to Lewis and Clark Caverns, which is the only cavern that you actually travel down, because it's in the mountain. So you actually go down 400 feet while you travel down the mountain in through the cavern. And at one point they take you when you're 400 feet down, you can go into total darkness. They turn off all the lights, and they put you in literal, like, there's not any light at all, and you lose all sense of balance and vision and sight. And for somebody that had depression, it was like the worst experience for me. Like I'm in the bottom of this cave freaking out. And then, they turn the lights on and you go back to traveling out. But it is kind of how it is. You're just searching for the light to know that something's going to be okay. And, it wasn't a long episode for me, because I am, I am medicated. So I'm not afraid to say that I take medication for depression. People don't want to admit it, but it's part of how I am, the way I am, that I can function and be where I am. And it's part of why I snapped out of that as quickly as I did. Like, I think it wouldn't have been the same.
So I think the visual even of just being in the cave in total darkness, this is a very challenging time for everyone and for leaders. And I know people are watching who are going to really resonate with that feeling of like hopelessness and what is the point. You mentioned the medication, but in your chapter, you also talk about, I feel like the things that you did to try and restore a sense of normalcy, restore a sense of like, no, I have a desire to show up and to lead and to grow my business. So what are some of the things that you did do to redirect coming out of that darkness?
Yeah, it was, you have to go back to what helped you get out of it in the first place, and, fitness has always been a thing for me. I'm like one of those like Peloton addicts. I follow all of them. I profess Peloton as a religion, but there is pieces of it that, they do guided meditation. I wasn't somebody that did meditation. I wasn't somebody that ever did yoga. And those things have all been added into my repertoire of part of my fitness regime. And, they really do make a difference, right? Mindfulness is real. Finding some stillness, finding a way to work through things and, calm yourself. It's a huge piece of getting out of the hole and finding your way. And, the one thing, and I right before, so it was like the pandemic hit right after I had been in South Africa for work, which was just incredible. And then I came back and I went to New York to see Simon Sinek, who, I call him a mentor. He has no idea who I am, but someday he will. But I love like the optimism, and it's not as much the optimism as the core principles of, that your why really matters. And, and when I was, in that hole, it was trying to figure out, okay, what is my why? What do I need to go do to get out of this? Not only for my family, who's all downstairs in the house, and, I can't just hide up here. It's not like when I had depression, when I was, leading a company, I would pull my car over to the side of the road and cry. I would hide under my desk in my office.
Yeah.
All those things happened to me. And, you're not in a position when, you're running your business and you're trying to get these things done. You just got to figure out how to get through it. So, so I leaned on meditation and fitness, and those things were, sort of became a good reason for me to get out of bed and go back to work. I changed my routine completely. I had been one of those like, okay, it's fine to wear, I wasn't getting dressed every day. Not that I put a suit on every day anymore, but, it wasn't like there was mornings I wouldn't shower. I would just, roll downstairs and start working, and there was no organization. So I ripped my office apart, re-put it back together, bought lighting, bought, a second screen so I could move things on screens, and, sort of just redid everything to try to figure out how I was going to find some, normalcy.
You hit on, just so many good things there. And, even thinking back to reestablishing your fitness routine. I know for me, like anytime I'm like miserable or feeling like, why do I feel this way? I just have to, it almost always happens where I realize like I haven't worked out for 2 days.
Yep.
It's like that probably is just the problem right there.
Yeah.
It does release so much negativity. And then this importance of our environment and our routine and recreating the environment that actually enables us to show up in the ways that we want to. I totally hear you on that. And I think for so many of us, like, even in mid-pandemic, I remember my poor brother like couldn't even get an office chair if he tried. You know,
Yeah.
everything sold out, and now you're in like the folding chair
Yeah,
that was
you're
in
in a
the
folding
basement.
chair. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you don't think about these things, and I like to. I'm very fortunate. My house has, I have a real office in my house, and I hadn't really used it that much before, and now it's like it is my home. But it's been, in some ways, like I said, it's been pretty life changing, to be home this much and be with my family as much as I've been when I hadn't been. I think I said. I, I counted 35 or 37 weeks that I traveled the year before.
Yeah.
Uh, and two of those trips were international, like 14-day trips, one to Japan, one to South Africa. And, you look back and you say, well, those are, I mean, amazing experiences. And I wouldn't put them back for anything. But that much of it gets old. It gets to be a lot.
Well, and you right. I love this line. There's been a huge upside to being home and spending more time as a real family unit. My daughter says she's listened to my networking pitch so many times that she can do it by heart. So she finally knows what I do for a living. And my son is too busy playing Minecraft to notice.
That's the world. That's it in a nutshell. It's funny too, because I used to, the company I was at was a government contractor. So, I have a clearance, and, I would disappear for weeks into this bunker in Montana where we were doing research in titanium extraction. So the kids used to joke around with their friends that I was like a CIA agent or some top secret agent, that because nobody ever knew where I was going. And when I would explain what I did, they wouldn't understand it anyway.
This is why I love doing these interviews. Like I had no idea about this part of your story. So maybe
Yeah.
that'll be a future book, is like top secret, and when people
Yeah.
can actually share their stories, like something around that. I wanna touch on, you've been talking about Simon Sinek, about finding your why.
Yeah.
And you write in your chapter, that's how I look back at the past 7 months and what I've learned. I've found my why. I truly enjoy helping people. Small businesses need help growing and navigating the world. Practicing my why every day helps me out of the darkness by bringing light to others. I just thought that was so beautiful, and I'm wondering what advice you have for those leaders out there who are still maybe struggling to find their why, or just think like, yeah, my why right now is whatever the company mission is. Like,
Yeah.
how would you help
Yeah,
leaders
and I
get on
think,
board?
yeah, part of it is actually, like, it's worth watching his TED Talk. It's the most watched TED Talk in history. It's like 14 minutes of, just genius. But the point of it really is that your why is your why. And you need to not, just because your company's why says one thing and your company's mission, that's not your why. You still have to figure out what it is that makes you tick and what makes you go, and what's your driver, and what's going to make you feel good and feel happy, and what makes you get up in the morning and say, wow, I like to go to work. I like doing what I do. And I like doing what I do because I get to help people. When people were when the first payroll protection program came out, you know, nobody had any idea what any of these EIDL, PPP, all this stuff. Nobody
Yep.
could figure it out. The guidance was terrible, and people are just trying to figure out what to do, and they're struggling, and nobody knows how long it's gonna last, how much money can I get, and it was, so you're a lawyer, you read the documents, you start to really pour into it and say, okay, I can figure this out. I know
Yeah.
what they're doing here. It was written by lawyers for lawyers, so we'll figure it out. We have a very good way of doing that in the legal industry. Protection at all costs. But people were calling, or someone would say, hey, anybody that understands this stuff, can they help? I can't tell you how many calls I took that I walked people through applications that I didn't even know the people. They're not clients of mine. They'll never be
Right.
clients of mine. I may never see them, never talk to them again, but they needed help, and
So
it was
good.
good for me.
Yeah.
It was that time when I needed to be helping other people, and that it was going to give me a good reason to keep going.
Hmm. Speaking of finding your why was it important for you to write your chapter in this book?
There was a couple things that drove it. One was sort of, I've always wanted to I always said I was going to write something. More than once I've said it. I have, a couple things that I've started that never really went anywhere. And, when I saw, what you stood for and what you were doing, it just was like, okay, this makes sense to me. When you said, and what sold it was when you said, the proceeds were going to a charity, we were all going to choose that together. And it was like, that's it. Like, this is why this gives me a reason to do this. Right.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't sure how the process was going to go for me because I had never forced myself to sit and do it. And it was, it went better for me than I thought it would, but doesn't mean that it would next time. But it was a good way for me to, sort of tell a story that I thought was important. Talking about depression and those pieces of it, there's so much stigma around it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not like, I don't profess about it. I don't put it on, I don't talk about it on social media all the time. And I'm on social media a lot. If anybody's on LinkedIn, you can't miss me. Yeah. You can't miss me. I'm pretty much there at all times. Not something I talk about on it. Not because I don't believe that I have something to say, because I believe I do have something to say about it, but I think it's a story that's told and, people can read it or they can't. And I just want to take the stigma out of that. You can tell your story and don't be ashamed of it. It is part of who you are and what you do. I'm not ashamed that this is where I am. It happened. Yeah. And it doesn't go away. So, you're kind of living with it for the rest of your life.
And how beautiful if, you discovering that your why is helping people. And, there's such a clear extension to you writing your chapter, being open and honest, and what it's helping people who can relate to you, who resonate with your story, what it's helping them to really see and recognize in themselves. Like, it's so aligned with who you are. And I'm so happy for you, and also just grateful for your contribution to the group, to the leaders, your energy, your positivity. And then for those watching who are not authors, Marc created us he's also a cocktail connoisseur. And so he created us a very special leading through the pandemic launch day cocktail, which was just so fun. And I love these little moments where we get to use all of our skills and different interests as we're working on something together. That was
one of the things about being home has been, I like to cook, and and it's like one of the things I love to cook, but I just never really, it was really like, okay, I could do that on a Saturday. And that was like planned ahead. Like, we would figure out, okay, we're going to cook this, I'm going to cook this, and I had to plan everything. Now I can cook any night I want. And, really get into different things. I talk about, getting into Israeli food, which was never something I really ate before, and Middle Eastern foods, and just been really intrigued by them and the flavors and the flavor profiles. And it's a lot of fun. Like, we did a whole, so there's a restaurant in Philly called Zahav, which is, it's one of the great restaurants in Philly, in the country. Mm-hmm. And the chef is Solomonov, and he's just really funny and really great, and I've been watching a lot. And so we were fortunate enough to go before pandemic. We went to Zahav, which is really hard to get into. We got in, and I got out, and I'm like, I got to cook everything. I need to learn everything.
Well, what I love about that story, and just thinking about the leaders in this book, is everyone really showing up and presenting themselves as the multifaceted, multi-interested, expansive people that you are. I just saw so many veils come down of like, oh, it's not my title, it's not my role. Like, this is who I am as a person. And this was these were the dark days of the pandemic. These were the good days of the pandemic, and and sharing, and I think for a lot of people, the time at home and creating new hobbies and restoring that sense of creativity that translates to the business and how we solve problems has been pretty cool to see among the group too.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I've loved reading, everybody's chapters, and just starting to connect with what everybody else went through as well, and trying to draw some parallels between us all. I think I'll have to read it a couple times before I get there. But one of the experiences that you had given us was to pair off and get to read other people's work sort of before we turned them in to the first edit. And that was just an amazing experience because you just were finished what you know, mine happened for me when I had finished my chapter. Like I was pretty done, and you know, traded off, and then got to read somebody else's again because you know I was already done, and that was it was a great part of the experience for me.
Yeah, I love the process of chapter swapping to build that connection, to see like how vulnerable people are willing to be and get inspired. And so I'm so happy that that was useful for you in this process. Let me before we wrap, you know, for you looking ahead to 2021, what are you focused on? What do you desire? Like, where is Marc headed after kind of traversing 2020 and coming out the other side?
So, I mean, I think, you know, I would say there's like multiple pieces going on all at the same time. And, you know, I'm trying to, I feel like I got really, really busy and just, you know, there's just a lot going on, which is not a bad thing. You know, that people want to be doing transactions and want to be doing work and want to get things moving again. You feel a lot. I feel like you start to feel some energy in January and February. I'm starting to feel like that movement of people wanting to get things going again, which is great. It feels a little overwhelming right now with, you know, 4,000 things going on. But I kind of like it that way, to be honest. You know, if I have to be honest about it, I really like having, you know, 4,000 things because it keeps me going.
Yep.
You know, I don't know what I would do if I was just sitting around. Like I'm not good like that. Never have been. I think, you know, there's like a couple pieces that I'm trying to launch, like some businesses off that, you know, one, I had a piece of software that I had developed that, you know, sort of was just sitting. So I brought in somebody, a partner to help me really get that moving because it's like I invested some money. I had it sitting on it's almost like shelf software. But it's driving me nuts that it's sitting there, but it's one of those things I just haven't focused on. So that's a big focus right now, is to really get that piece moving. I have this virtual cocktail club. You know, like you said, I really like cocktails. So we're trying to get that moving. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a challenge in COVID to, you know, source airplane-sized bottles of liquor. As weird as that seems, really hard to find them.
It doesn't see it. I mean,
seems opposite the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, the liquor stores, I mean, that's true for the planes, but I mean, the liquor stores have been the thing that has not closed at all this year. And we know drinking's been on the rise, so it doesn't surprise me as much. So maybe you can help guide people to like drink less, but more refined.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's become like sort of one of those, like, that was something I missed from travel was, you know, speakeasies, cocktail bars, you know, those cool places that you find that just are in these cities, and you're you know, somebody tells you about them and you go and you're like, wow, that's so cool. Just so different than any place else you've been.
Even just the, you know, airport Chili's bar conversations of people passing through. Like, I love those
some of the best ones.
And just like so good. I'm looking forward to getting back to that for sure.
Yeah.
Marc, any final thoughts? Any final words of wisdom?
I think I'll use the same way I ended, you know, my chapter, which is, you know, and if the only thing I profess on social media and I continually profess is, you know, just find some empathy in the world for you, and be empathetic to people around you. Don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know what's going on in the past. Try to, and just be kind. And I think, you know, if we all had a little more of that, you know, there's a lot we can all do. And, you know, we got so far away from it. And I just feel like, you know, in the United States in particular, it's just really been we really got pretty separated. And I think it's time to, you know, it's time for everybody to just find some kindness and, you know, there's money to be made for everybody. Right.
And you said it there. It's like, it starts with ourselves, being empathetic and kind toward ourselves and the struggles that we're going to, and knowing we're not perfect, even though as leaders, we feel like we need to be. And then, there's space for everyone. There's money for everyone. Like, there's not this fixed pie mentality, which is really, really destructive right now.
Yeah.
Like, we can all grow, we can all lead, we can all succeed. And how do we actually kind of allow good things to come into our life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Marc, it's been so great reconnecting with you tonight, hearing stories that I've never heard before in this conversation. There's another book inside of you, I'm sure of
there's
it.
probably a couple more.
But I want to thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your wisdom in the book.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And if you don't have your copy, it's now available in print. So head over to Amazon, check out Marc's Chapter. It's truly incredible. And if you'd like to participate in a multi-author book or a solo book, we have a couple ones coming out soon. I'll drop it into the comments. Marc, thanks again. And we'll see everyone else tomorrow for day 2 of the summit.